welcome you to the February meeting of the Lctcs Board of Supervisors. Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, I'll ask Lctcs Board Services Coordinator Sarah Langino-Kleinpeter to review a few points, given that we are holding a meeting of the board with virtual guests and live streaming to YouTube. Sarah?
Yes, sir. Good morning, members of the board. Again, please be mindful that we are live streaming this meeting. And those joining by remote access, asked to keep yourselves on mute during the meeting. Please use the raise hand feature if you have a comment or a question. And when recognized to speak, unmute yourself and give it a few minutes before you begin talking. Then return to mute to avoid background noise during the remainder of today's meeting. If you have trouble with your technology at any point, please text me or call my cell phone. You may view the board items via links posted on the Lctcs website. We will conduct a roll call at the start of the meeting to establish a quorum as needed, and then to approve the agenda once we enter executive session or with voiced opposition to an item. Time will be given at each motion to voice concern or request a roll call vote. Members, please state your name when making a motion. Motions must be made via sound, not gesture. Special guests and staff, please remember to accept the request to join as a panelist when it is time for you to present. Please keep your microphones on mute until your presentation begins. Public comments may be made at today's meeting via the open conference call at 1-877-810-9415, access code 6499147#. That information is also on the notice of meetings posted on the Lctcs website, lctcs.edu. Any public comments received will be read during the meeting by a board secretary or designee. All public comments must include an agenda item number, a name, and a brief statement. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per comment. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Would like to call this meeting to order of the February 9th, 2022 Lctcs Board of Supervisors. At this point, I would like to ask Tari Bradford to lead us in the pledge, and that will be Sarah. Behind Sarah, there's the flag.
Please join me and place your hand over your heart. Those who are military, please do your military salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. This point, would like to, members, you have received the agenda in accordance with Louisiana Revised Statutes 42:17.1. As presiding officer, I have determined that the matters on this agenda are considered critical or time sensitive and should not be delayed. At this point, I would request a motion to approve the February 9th, 2022 agenda and the consideration of the matters on it.
So moved.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, before we can make a motion on this item, we do have to conduct a roll call vote at the start of the meeting.
Oh, my goodness, Sarah. You should have interrupted me sooner.
You were doing it so eloquently, I just
Well, you know,
had to wait for you to finish speaking. We'll do a roll call. Paul Price.
I'm here.
Willie
Sorta.
Mount.
Here.
Chip Jackson.
Here.
Tari Bradford.
Here.
Cynthia Butler McIntyre.
I'm here.
Helen Carter.
Here.
Roman Hardy.
Here.
Tim Hardy is absent. Erica McConduit is not here, but does plan on joining momentarily. Michael Murphy.
Here.
Stan Salath,
Here.
Stevie Smith is absent. Stevie Toops is absent at this time. And Craig Spawn is absent. Josh Kubion
Here.
and Haley Pickron. Here. Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum of the board present.
We do. Well, that's great.
Mhm.
So I won't go over my spiel again, but at this point, I would like to request a motion to approve the agenda and the consideration of the matters on it.
Move.
And I believe there was a motion by Ms. Mount and then a second by Mr. Kubion. And we do have to have a roll call vote to approve the agenda, and that will be our almost last roll call vote of the day. Mr. Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Butler McIntyre,
Yes.
Supervisor Carter,
Yes.
Supervisor Hardy Roman,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yes.
Supervisor Salah,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops. Mr. Toops, I believe you've joined us. Yay. Mr. Toops is here. We will note for the record at roll call, Mr. Toops was with us, but not, and not there. Here you go, Quentin. And we'll continue that roll call vote. Supervisor Kubion
Here.
and Supervisor Pickron. Yes. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would like to note that the outcome of the vote ensured that those present voted affirmatively to adopt the agenda and consider the items on it.
All righty. Thank you, ma'am. At this point, I would request a motion to approve the January 12th, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
Move.
Second.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Kubion and a second by Ms. Butler McIntyre.
Do we need any discussion? Any opposition? Is that good, Sarah? Okay, good deal. Well, good morning. Welcome to another round of Zoom theater here. I would keep my report brief, but I got several items to go over. At this point, I would like to welcome Supervisor Haley Pickron to the Lctcs Board of Supervisors. She was selected by her council of student body peers to fill the term that was vacated by Supervisor Almedia's resignation. She was sworn in earlier this week in advance of today's meeting. Haley is a sophomore general studies major at Bossier Parish Community College. Ms. Pickron is a second-year Cavalier Express student recruiter, the current SGA president, and the 2022 BIPSI homecoming queen. She's married to Kenneth, and they recently celebrated their 5th anniversary. She enjoys meeting new people and has a passion for helping others in any way possible. Haley likes to craft, cook, and spend time with her pet rabbit, Honey, in her spare time. Upon graduation at Bossier Parish Community College, she plans to continue her educational journey to pursue a bachelor and master's degree and begin a career in the higher education field. At this point, would like to ask her if she would like to begin her speech for today's welcome. Haley?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. It's such an honor to be with all of you. I was very thankful to be chosen as a representative. I hope to eventually get to meet all of you in person, and so hopefully that will happen. I know COVID's caused a lot of issues, but hopefully I'll get to meet all of you in person. I would love that very much. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We look forward to that too. I promise. These Zoom calls they're handy at times, but man, there's nothing like getting together and enjoying each other's company and getting to know folks. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Next item on my list is I would like to congratulate Supervisor Roman Hardy on his retirement. I know he's, I I guess I guess he has officially retired. I'm not sure, but I know that it's either pending or happened. And all I can do is just tell you to take your phone off the hook, because when they find out, they'll start calling, man. You got anything you would like to say in your defense?
Yep. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week I announced my retirement from Shell. It'll be effective April 30th after 34 years. So can't tell you, just a person who's very grateful from growing up in North Lake Charles, coming to LSU, and then get a chance to travel the world and experience cultures from all over the place. I had a fantastic, I would say second phase of my life. I'm looking forward to the next phase. My wife and I will stay here in Louisiana. So after being away for 25 years and being back the last 6, we realized how much we miss home. So we're going to stay here in the greater Baton Rouge area. And I look forward to continue to serve this board. Education, my parents were retired public school teachers. So were my wife's. And being able to do my part to help with the education system of Louisiana, it's done so much for me. It's just an honor. So look forward to continuing to serve, and thank you for the kind words.
Sir, congratulations. I think you'll find that retired life is good, but you won't be able to imagine how you managed to accomplish anything during those 34 years, because you'll get busy, I promise. But congratulations on that. Would also like to offer congratulations to Tim Hardy on his role in the first ever climate action plan through the Governor's Climate Initiatives Task Force. Sarah will forward the press release to each of you. I encourage you to read through it. Tim is in DC at the ACCT legislative meeting right now, trying to keep everything straight up there. And we're very fortunate to have him so active in that organization. He does a great job with it. Supervisor Josh Kuvion recently attended the Council of Student Body Presidents in Washington, D.C. Josh, would you and Chancellor Saltel like to say a few words about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So okay. So we have a presentation. I believe Dr. Saltel is on here, maybe. Did I say wrong? Oh, there we go.
We are getting him on for you.
Perfect.
Presentation is up, and I'm happy to help you.
Great. So first, I just want to say thank you, and I am so honored just to be able to represent Lctcs in Washington and my home college of CLTCC, just to help bring attention to the system as a whole. The entire trip, truly, I wish I could put it into words how amazing it was, but it was an honor to be able to represent the system and my school and just the hard work that everyone on this board and in our system is doing every day. So we can roll to the next one. So I wasn't alone in DC representing LCTCS. We had student presidents from BRCC, Delgado, and River Parish Community College. And to say that these individuals are the perfect representation of what our system is about: diversity, inclusion, and serving for higher education in our state was phenomenal. Who's this? So we met with Senator Cassidy on one of the days, and he ran us through some of the policies that he had been working on, and then gave us some info on his internship that he is offering in DC for the students. So that was exciting. And then we had the opportunity to meet with Congresswoman Letlow, and to have someone in Congress that has such a strong stance on education was phenomenal. She was a joy to me, and I can probably speak for the entire COST team in saying it was one of the highlights of our entire trip. So, fun backstory on this: as glamorous as this photo may seem, I need everyone to know that it was 28 degrees when I was taking this photo. So after ripping off my winter coat, gloves, scarves, we got about 2 to 3 pics in, and then I had to wrap back up and head to the next spot. And we can go to the next slide. Is it gonna go? There we go. So also, same story. You can't tell in this photo, but it was actually snowing this day. This photo is in front of the Library of Congress. Again, stripped down all my winter gear, snapped the pic, bundled back up, headed to the next spot. But it was an incredible opportunity just to be able to see everything that was there. So probably one of the greatest experience that I had on the trip itself was being able to meet with other university presidents, student-wise, across the state. Being able to hear their challenges that they're facing, the stuff that's working for them, not working for them, was really eye-opening just to be able to hear their stories. And then, so my sweet friend, Miss Monica, Monica goes to LSUA here at Alexandria and serves as the student board member for the LSU system. So it was nice to have a little piece of home, being that we're both here from Alexandria, represented in DC for Central Louisiana. It was awesome. And we go next. So I'm sure this lady is no stranger to most of us. Commissioner Reed met with our cost team a few different times throughout the week, and as always provided excellent leadership, excellent guidance, and just, I mean, she's great. She's Dr. Reed. I mean, she truly was such a light throughout the whole entire trip. We can go next, sorry. And then again, Ms. Aaron with the Board of Regents, also, like I was saying about Dr. Reed, Ms. Aaron provided fantastic scheduling, leadership, guidance throughout our entire trip. So we were super happy to have her there. So this photo was a process. This is in the US Capitol on the House of Representatives side. We were able to go into the lobby in this area, go through security, which is about like airport security. We arrived too early for our meeting, got kicked out, had to go stand outside in the snow, went back through airport security, basically, finally got into our meeting, and we met with Congressman Scalise's team, and they gave us some insight on his internship program that he was offering also. Then our meeting at SHIO, we got to hear a little bit about what they do as far as higher education for the state of Louisiana and in the country. We also got to speak up on our own personal issues that we as student presidents felt needed some more attention in our state and dealing with higher education, with broadband issues, open enrollment for universities, and then just funding higher education efforts across the state. So I think the perfect way to bring a group of Louisiana students to Washington, DC would be to end it with a Louisiana style Mardi Gras ball. We received, all of our cost team received tickets from Congressman Garrett Graves' team, and we all got to attend the ball. And truly, it was probably the biggest, craziest event I've ever been to in my entire life. And if you ever have the opportunity to go, I highly, highly suggest it. We can fast forward. And so, yeah, I mean, the trip itself was phenomenal. And again, truly, it was such an honor to be able to represent the Lctcs system, the state of Louisiana during this trip. I've had so many people support me on my journey, not only through nursing school, but just through this whole higher education process. And I have to give a big shout out to both of my chancellors, Dr. Heather Poole, Dr. Jimmy Sawtell, my Lctcs advisors, Dr. Amber Blair, Damian Glover, Miss Sarah Klein-Peter for all her help that she helps me with the board. And then you guys, just the board itself, it truly has been so amazing to be a part of this and to learn from you guys and to kind of grow on this journey of higher education that I'm going through. But just big shout out to everyone. There's so many more people I feel like I could thank, but just thank you all so much. It was an amazing trip. Dr. Sawtell.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Couvillon and Chairman Price, Dr. Sullivan, members of the board. Good morning. As you can see, we are off the charts proud of Supervisor Couvillon. He represented CLTCC, LCTCS in the state of Louisiana so well. I will make one note. I guess my invitation to the Mardi Gras ball got lost in the mail. I don't know how that happened, but I was glad that he had a good time. He actually took over our social media for the entire trip. So he has a wonderful journal of what he experienced. I was there as well with members of the Chamber of Commerce and other stakeholders from Central Louisiana. I did not see Supervisor Couvillon. I couldn't keep up with him. I only heard of the legend of what he was doing. And we look forward to another CLTCC Bobcat going to Washington, D.C. This is our second in the last 3 years. You may remember that Shanko Williams also represented us so well and was there coincidentally with LSU student supervisor from LSUA, Ricky Brazel. So we're keeping a trend going, but we could not be more proud. Thank you, LCTCS, System Office, Dr. Sullivan, our board, for promoting this. We've come a long way in the last 22 years, and this is just why we're in the business. So thank y'all very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sawtelle. Josh, sound like you had a great trip, man. Congratulations. I know it was a lifetime event. Hopefully you'll get to go back, and maybe you can find Dr. Sawtelle's invitation to the Mardi Gras ball next year.
It's up there somewhere. I'm going to find it.
Anybody else got anything they want to add to this? All right. Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate the presentation. But also, I got two more little things to remind you of. The LCTCS Workforce Experience will take place Tuesday, April 12th at the Capitol Barracks. So those that can, please make your plans to attend. And the 2022 Phi Theta Kappa All-State Ceremony Luncheon will be a virtual ceremony on April 22nd. Please let Sarah know if you want to join, and she will make sure that you get the virtual link. I believe that wraps up my presentation, Dr. Sullivan.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each member of the board for taking time today, and look forward to quite an agenda that we have in front of us today. In particular, I want to begin with one of the highest notes that we've seen in this system in 20 plus years now. I'd like to invite, if we can, Chancellor Willie Smith from Baton Rouge Community College, as well as from Franciscan missionaries of Our Lady Health System, and in particular, Scott Wester, who is the Baton Rouge Market President, as well as Tina Schaefer, who's the Vice President for Talent Strategy and the Chief DEI Officer. We have a big announcement we'd like to make today, and I'd like to turn it over, if we can now, to Chancellor Willie Smith. Say hello to Scott. Good to see you today. Great to be with you, and thank you for your support. But with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chancellor.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, supervisors. Thank you guys for allowing us to be on this Zoom call today with you to take care of board's matter. About a year ago, we successfully secured about $38 million from capital outlay to build a new nursing and allied health building. As you can imagine, the demand for nursing and allied health professionals across this state and this country has been great. We all know about some of the significant challenges that our healthcare providers face due to COVID, the lack of employees, those who have burned out. And so today we're so excited to share a partnership, unique partnership between Baton Rouge Community College and Our Lady of the Lake Hospital that will increase access to success for BRCC students who are pursuing nursing and allied health career fields. We have actually partnered with Our Lady of the Lake to secure about $12 million in donation that will support a whole range of activities to include donor recognition, interior and exterior signage, program development support, our nurse and allied health scholarships, faculty professional development, customized training programs, including sports medicine, clinical rotations, interviews and job placement for BRCC nurse and allied health students, and job placement for BRCC PSC students. In addition, through this donation, we will receive athletic sponsorship, sports performance and training, venue signage, as well as scholarships that are going to support continue education for many of our students in the greater Baton Rouge area to be able to access our mission, but certainly our partner mission of providing the talent that they need. This partnership is significant to us, but it's also significant and impactful to the local and regional economy, where it will substantially increase the number of trained professionals in the region throughout the state. So with that said, I'd like to introduce two of our partners here today, Mr. Scott Wester, CEO, and Ms. Tina Schaefer, Vice President of Talent and DEI for Our Lady of the Lake. I now would like to turn them over to them. Thank you. Scott?
Thank you very much, Chancellor Smith, and thank you, Chairman and Dr. Sullivan, for allowing us a few minutes today on the agenda. And we are more than excited. We're ecstatic about the partnership with Baton Rouge Community College, and really want to appreciate really the team, Chancellor Smith, Philip Smith within the foundation, and Dr. Barlow. And I'm going to just have couple slides, then I'll just make some closing comments and turn it over to Tina. And so if you can go to the next slide, just want to give you a quick overview about who we are, being the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady Health System. We're a large Catholic-based health system located predominantly in Louisiana. We do now have St. Dominic's in the Jackson market, and you can see how important predominantly the I-10 corridor, all the way from Lafayette, all the way over to Bogalusa, Louisiana. That's where majority of our workforce resides today. On the next slide, we're also an extraordinarily large system. Our Lady of the Lake itself is one of the largest medical centers in the United States. We're probably top 20 in size and scale and scope of services. But you can just see the magnitude. We have 9 hospitals in our health system. We do about 2,300 patient beds. You can just see the massive amount of flow of activity we have, both on the hospital side and our growing area being our ambulatory and physicians. We have 1,300,000 physician office visits that we have within our over 600 employed physician in many different clinics around the state, predominantly in the Baton Rouge and I-10 corridor. You can see about 18,000 team members, and you can turn to the next one. We have, again, just size of everything. In the Baton Rouge market itself, we have over 7,800 dedicated team members within Our Lady of the Lake, and then we have a couple thousand more that is part of our health system. So we have over 10,000. We're one of the largest employers in the Baton Rouge region. And again, we're also very much of a learning organization. Most of you probably know the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady University. Dr. Tina Holland is at the helm of that. We have a terrific relationship between the Baton Rouge Community College and FranU. But I think, as Dr. Sullivan also recognizes, we have a lot of transfer agreements across the I-10 through the community college and technical colleges with FranU. So that's a big part of this relationship, is really the interconnectivity, both on the talk about the high school level, community technical level, and then with FranU and the higher education side. And you can just see the amount of work we have within that. This is our family of service, being the next slide. We're multifaceted. We're not just a hospital. So we have, as we talked about, the physician group. We have many locations all the way through Assumption, but we do a lot of work in senior services, home health care. And on the bottom, you have all these different joint ventures that many people don't even know that the lake either has an equity or a controlling interest in all these other organizations. So workforce is essential. I'm going to turn it over to Tina here right now. And again, on behalf of Our Lady of the Lake and our health system, I can't thank Chancellor Smith and hopefully the commitment by Dr. Sullivan and the board here within Lctcs. So again, appreciate the time, and we are ecstatic and can't wait to get this new building up and operational. And I told Chancellor Smith, we will use all of our resources from an advocacy role. This is one of our top priorities in this upcoming legislative session, so we can move as quickly as we can to get this building moved and double its size, if not even greatly, so we can continue to build on the workforce development side. Tina?
Sure. All I want to wrap up by saying is, as the System Vice President for Talent Strategy and Chief Diversity Officer, workforce is a huge part of the current role, and BRCC has been a tremendous partner over the past over the years as it relates to our health system being agile, customizing programs, cranking out the necessary programs, shifting programs when we need to between our nursing and allied health universities. And so we see this as a unique opportunity to certainly magnify our response and our dedication to the Baton Rouge region, specifically to that sector of the community. I was born and raised in that area, and have seen the tremendous amount of impact that both our health system and institutions like BRCC has made on our mid-city. And so we are very thankful for the opportunity to move forward and then pray that this is a long-term partnership that, and that through this partnership that many join in to support the growth of our workforce, the success, the overall health of our communities. And we're looking forward to this. Thank you. That's all. You can progress to the end of the slide. Thank you so much.
Very good. With that, Chancellor, thank you for bringing this item forward. Scott, thank you to Our Lady of the Lake for all that you guys are doing across this community and really across the region. Tina, thank you for the focus that you brought to this discussion to help us to really formalize this agreement and say to the public, we're all pulling in the same direction here. There's a member of the board that I had a discussion with a couple of years ago about how we drive workforce productivity around healthcare. And one of the things that he said to me, a very wise advice, and they'll know exactly who it is our community and technical colleges have a responsibility to meet our partners' needs in terms of workforce, but also to meet the healthcare demands of Louisiana. We share in that responsibility. And in Our Lady of the Lake, what we have found is a partner who understands that broader responsibility. Scott, just want to say thank you. Thank you for the incredible work you guys have done throughout this pandemic. You've been leaders right there at the front every single day, and we're better because of the work that you guys do here in the Baton Rouge market and across Louisiana. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to open it up and ask if there are questions from members of the board.
Anybody got any questions?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add and echo what Dr. Sullivan said. Scott Wester mentioned interconnectivity, and I think that's so important nowadays. I think the ability to show that we can work together as a team, that we can, it sounds corny, but to make 1 + 1 = 3. And I think that's what Fran Yu is setting out to do with Dr. Smith and the team at BRCC. These articulation agreements have been there. Dr. Holland has these throughout the state. I think that's fantastic. But what you have to understand about Fran Yu and about the way the lake set this up is the lake in the lake system doesn't take every single nurse and every single graduate that comes out of this facility. That it is the truest vision of a rising tide raises all ships. And I think that's the spirit that LCTCS has. At least that's what Monty sold me on 14 years ago when they got on this board. And I love the passion. I love the way that Dr. Holland runs that facility. I love watching she and Dr. Smith get together. And I'm knowing that, look, what's neat is no matter what hospital you go to or what doctor you go to, you probably see somebody with a little Fran Yu pen on them. And so I think it's really neat. I think it's about opening up opportunities for the people of Louisiana. I would probably challenge a lot of other states to see if they have something like this. So kudos to the team, both at the LCTCS system, Dr. Smith at the schools, and to Scott and Tina and Dr. Holland, who have done this at Fran Yu. Just so proud to watch it, to have a small ringside seat watching it happen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there are no further comments, I would like to ask if, on a point of personal privilege, if we can ask the board to consider taking up items H1 and H2, both of which relate to the presentation that you've just heard. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if you would, can you handle that item as a committee of the whole, perhaps?
Yeah. Hang on 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we just need to proceed with those,
Sure, if you'd like, and I have no problem reading the recommendation. If you'd like, item
Sure.
H1 under the
Yes.
facilities agenda, is strategic partnership announcement for Baton Rouge Community College. Staff recommends that the board authorize the president and the chancellor of Baton Rouge Community College to negotiate and execute a cooperative endeavor agreement between the college and the Franciscan missionaries of Our Lady Health System to renovate a portion of the Bonnie Santee building on the mid-city campus for use as a healthcare center.
Okay, y'all heard the recommendation.
Move.
A
Second.
motion by Mr. Kuvion and a second by Toops.
Is there any more discussion about it? Is there, Sarah, we just need, is there any opposition to the motion that's presented, to the recommendation? Hearing none, that motion does carry.
Excellent. Item 2 here is authorizing the naming opportunity at Baton Rouge Community College. In accordance with LCTCS policy, board policy 4.003 and Baton Rouge Community College's own naming policy, this memo represents the formal request by the college. Staff recommends that the board authorize exclusive naming rights over a 10-year period for the proposed nursing and allied health facility at the Baton Rouge Community College.
Okay, you've heard the recommendations. Is there a motion to that effect?
Move.
Second.
second,
There's a motion by Mr. Kuvion and a second by Mr. Toops and Ms. Butler McIntyre.
Any more discussion? Is there any opposition to that motion? Hearing none, that motion carries.
Members of the board, thank you very much to Scott, to Tina. Thank you for, again, your partnership and all that you are doing to advance the state of Louisiana and the health of our people. We look forward to continued discussions with you as to how we solve some of the biggest challenges that Louisiana faces. Thank you again for taking the time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great job.
So jump down to the next item we will talk about is one that I've been so excited to have this discussion with the board because I think it's just an incredible advancement overall. Just heard from Supervisor Kuvion, who shared with us his time in Washington, D.C. 8 years now, we have been working to try to expand access to Pell Grants for those folks that are taking shorter term certification programs. 8 years we've been in this discussion. Supervisor Kuvion makes a single trip to Washington, D.C. and gets the vote done last Friday. So I'm trying to figure this out here, Supervisor. If I just touched base with you a few years earlier, you could have saved us a lot of time, right? It was just this past week that we saw a vote to adopt workforce Pell as policy for this nation. I want to just give you a little bit of the history, and Supervisor Bradford, this is near and dear to your heart. I know you were very much instrumental in this idea's creation. Going all the way back to 2009-10, when then Senator Landrieu was the very first sponsor of the Jobs Act. Short-term training paid for using the Pell Grant Fund. And just an incredible idea. If you look at what has happened since just this past Thursday, we have the adoption of Workforce Pell in the current America Competes Act. We have now members of the conference committee between the House and the Senate that are being named. We continue to work those members. I want to thank again Supervisor Hardy, Tim Hardy, who was right there this past Thursday making phone calls alongside us, talking to members of Congress, pushing this issue. So a big, big win, not just for community colleges and not just for our colleges, but for people. Remember the numbers when we said 3/4 of those people who are taking short-term training programs were white male. 2/3 of our students enrolled in credit programs funded by the Pell Grant were African-American female. Policy matters and access matters when it comes to education and training. So with that, I just wanted to share that great news. Just a whole heck of a lot has changed in Washington, D.C. in terms of policy, just with that single vote, a big, big step forward. I want to turn our attention, if we can, to universal transfer. You'll note that a few years back, it was our good friend, Senator Ben Nevers, who sponsored legislation to codify transfer in Louisiana. I believe that goes back to about 2009, 2010 timeframe. We have with us today a colleague from the Board of Regents who is working in close conjunction with the statewide Articulation and Transfer Council to develop the next iteration of what should transfer look like in the state of Louisiana. I want to thank Commissioner Reed for her leadership on this one. Certainly want to thank and welcome Tristan Denley. Dr. Denley joins us from the state of Georgia. Prior to that, he served in the Tennessee Board of Regents for a number of years, just has an incredible background, understands transfer and career pathways as well as anyone that I've encountered across the nation. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Palermo as well as to Dr. Denley to give us a quick update on the direction that we can anticipate in terms of universal transfer.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, Chairman Price, President Sullivan, members today. As Dr. Sullivan alluded to, been serving on the statewide articulation and transfer committee for a little over a year now, discussing with our four-year partners on how to identify barriers and remove those barriers for our students at the LCTCS colleges. So I'm thrilled that Dr. Tristan Denley, I think he's been in Louisiana about a month. And so
That's right.
very, very busy. And I think his office still doesn't have books on the shelves. We've teased each other a little bit about that. So Dr. Denley is going to come forward to the board and just kind of discuss some legislation that's being drafted and really just kind of open it up for, sharing what he's doing, questions that we may have. Dr. Denley, I turn it over to you.
Dr. Palermo, thanks so much, and thank you, members of the board, and President Sullivan, for time to talk and discuss today. And as we've said, we're really seeking feedback. We've already been working with the four CAOs of the public systems and with the State Articulation and Transfer Council. And this really is work to try to expand and amplify that earlier work going back about a decade to create that State Articulation and Transfer Council and the transfer matrix. I know Dr. Palermo and President Sullivan will agree that work got us a long way down the road, but not all the way down the road. There are still plenty of challenges that transfer students face across the state as they try to, when they earn credits, making sure that those credits really are transferred seamlessly and elegantly, and in ways where when they transfer those credits, that they really do actually count in the ways that they would imagine towards the degrees that they're seeking. I couldn't help but notice when you were introducing Haley that she anticipates transferring, and I'm sure she wants to make sure that when she gets to her four-year institution, that all the credits that she took, they transfer into her degree, and she's that much closer to earning her degree. And so that's really the new iteration and the language that we will be proposing, that on the one hand, to tighten up all the language around the matrix itself and course by course transfer, really making sure that all of that is in all the shape that it should be. Over the last decade, I know we've learned plenty of lessons about ways in which that doesn't quite function the way that we would hope. Making sure that when students transfer, that they really are getting course credit that furthers their progress towards their degree, not simply sort of empty credit that is credit in name but not in nature, if that makes any sense. But the new piece really is recognizing that course by course transfer sort of isn't enough to do everything that we need, because the reality is that students, when they transfer, they may transfer and then discover that the course that they took wasn't the course that the program they transfer into really wants. Maybe they sure enough took a course in history and that satisfies their general education requirement, but the program they transferred in wants world history, US history, or specific history that they didn't take. Or maybe they want to transfer and work in business, and they satisfied their social science requirement using psychology and history, and the business program says, well, you should have taken macro and microeconomics. That's what we need. And so there really is that problem about the fact that when you get into that program, you want to make sure that you took exactly the courses that program requires. And unfortunately, that currently requires a certain level of clairvoyance, anticipating the future about where you're going to go and exactly what those requirements will be. So the legislation we are anticipating, and the work that we're trying to put together, is to create a set of subject-driven transfer pathways. So these transfer pathways would be new ways in which students could satisfy the requirements of the ASLT or the AALT, or transfer associate's degrees. And each of those transfer pathways would be 60-hour curricula that would be guaranteed to transfer in total to any of our four-year institutions. So an example might be, take that student who wants to transfer in business. They could begin at any of the Lcts schools or any of the public schools in the state. They could take that 60-hour curriculum, it's courses that are along that transfer pathway for business. and be guaranteed that no matter which four-year institution they went to and began that business program, that all of those 60 hours would count, and they would sure enough be 60 hours closer to earning that bachelor's degree. Of course, that would be a different pathway from a student who wants to transfer in nursing, or wants to transfer in physics, or wants to transfer in history or criminal justice, or any of those programs. We would bring together discipline experts from across the state who would then agree on a standard and recognized curriculum that students could then take courses along that transfer pathway and be assured that all of the courses that are in that pathway would all transfer, that they would all count in the way that they would anticipate, and that that student would indeed be that much closer. Of course, this is all the more important now with so much of the work around dual enrollment and our fast forward programs and so on. Students beginning those transfer pathways all the way down as part of their high school experience is just something which we know will significantly advantage our state. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions and of course any suggestions that you have that you would like to see in this new language.
Thank you, Dr. Denley. I'd just open it up to the board members and ask any questions out there, particularly student board members. I know this is probably an issue that is front and center for you. Any questions or comments?
Dr. Monty, I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
As we look at transfer credit, I think we need to be conscious and mindful of the history of what has taken place. I know that Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid was around when this was originally developed not too many years ago, but I would certainly be hopeful that somewhere in this process, as these discussions take place, that somebody might want to make a visit or be inclusive of Senator Ben Nevers, who wrote this law, and in view of what his intentions were at the time. So I just pass that on for what it's worth if we're going to make significant changes to the transfer credit policy.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and just to be clear, the changes that are being suggested are really relatively minor in the existing legislation. It's that additional idea of the transfer pathways, but I'll be happy to take that suggestion. Thank you.
Very good. Other thoughts or comments or questions?
Yes,
sir.
Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Denley, I just want to say thank you. I haven't spent my career in higher education. Student transfer is one of the biggest problems, and not only students not knowing what's going to be or thinking it's going to, but the additional costs that students wind up with, because a 120 credit program becomes a 130 credit program because courses they paid for and took in good faith, they find are not accepted. And I hope the legislation has teeth in it, that people at the department level, because that's where I see a lot of this changes. The department just ups and says, we're not going to take this course that a student took in good faith. So I congratulate you. And I think legislation is needed so that students have assurance that what they're taking in good faith and will transfer and do not have to take on these additional costs. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very well said, and spoken like someone who understands it from the inside, right? Because certainly you've seen it, no doubt. Other members of the board, any questions or comments for Dr. Denley?
I just another quick question. Sorry. Is it for certain pathways? Yeah, I know you referenced like nursing, business. Are there very like specific pathways that have been identified or programs?
Right, so that would be the intention. And clearly we would begin with the most popular programs and gradually work our way through. But just with each particular discipline, as you just suggested, we need to sort of figure out, well, what are the specific courses that discipline really wants to be included in this pathway. There'll be other parts of that pathway where, they may not have a particular opinion as to which particular history or which particular history class they take. But there are other parts of the curriculum where and different disciplines will care about different parts of that journey. But no, exactly, yeah.
So Supervisor McConduit, just one thing to add there, the original legislation created the degree that is called the Louisiana Transfer Degree. There's an Associate of Arts and an
Right.
Associate of Science versions. So effectively what we did was 10 years or so ago, we created the degree directions. What we're talking about now is stepping down a level in terms of the data to make sure that the courses that students are taking are not, this broad, but they're this broad.
And very
narrowing
specific.
in that number of
Yeah.
extra credits as Supervisor Jackson said.
And
Yeah.
a student could certainly still follow that general pathway if they didn't know particularly where they were headed. But if they knew where they wanted to go, then let's get them there.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I think just part of that would be just making sure that after this passes, because you have to speak it into existence, that then the marketing behind it, right? Because I think that the clarity and really helping students understand because I have a college student right now at LSU, and I'm just saying, like, even on that side of the table, she struggles, right? Like understanding fully those clearly defined pathways. So I think just, making sure that the more we can articulate exactly the specificity and you would need to take this, then that will be even, a good part to add on to this plan.
Yes.
No doubt. Very, very well said. Supervisor Kubion, you had something to add?
Yeah, so this is actually something I'm currently going through with my nursing program, moving into my bachelor's. I had taken a biology last semester that was supposed to transfer in for my bachelor's program, and there was a lot of confusion. And then turns out I took the biology for fun, basically, because it will not transfer over to my four-year university for my bachelor program. But I appreciate the work that's being done and that is being, pushed to the forefront, and that we're trying to have a resolution to all of this. So thank you.
Thank
Josh,
you. If you wouldn't mind, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to me, I would love to talk in more detail about that particular course and understand that a lot more. Thank you.
Josh, you said it about as well as you could. You said you took it for fun, right? You've heard us talk about over and over and over again that time is the enemy. When we're adding courses that ultimately are not counting, what we are adding is time, and time is the enemy. We've got to get to a point where we're helping students to accomplish successes along the way. And certainly I know that's part, Dr. Denley, of what you are trying to accomplish. Let me open it up one final time. Any other questions or comments from members of the board?
Well, Monty, I just want to build on to that and just say one other piece is that when I mentioned my daughter, I have her taking classes at Delgado also. So it goes both ways, right? Like, I think the clarity is not there on both sides of the table. And so I just, I bring that point up because she has also taken fun classes at Delgado that, did not, that LSU, where she is a student, did not accept. So.
No doubt. We have to do a better job of making sure that, it's right there on the label when you choose to buy, right? Dr. Denley, I do have one thing to add. You are absolutely welcome to Louisiana by the Louisiana Community and Technical College System. And I will have to admit this, though. We have made a couple of really good hires over the years from the state of Georgia, in folks like Neil Aspinwall and Dennis Epps. But I got to admit to you, your accent is not quite like theirs. I just want to make sure everybody recognizes that there's not some pocket in Georgia where that's the local dialect. So, but all kidding aside, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We welcome you to Louisiana. Look forward to working with you.
Look forward to working with you too. Thanks so much for your time today. Thank you.
All right, with that, I want to turn to Chris Broadwater. I think all of you are aware that over the last year and a half now, we have had a tremendous success with Reboot Your Career. $10 million provided from the governor to provide short-term certification training for people across Louisiana in high demand sectors. That effort was so successful, as you'll hear in a few minutes, that now what we've seen from the governor in his current executive budget is a $20 million fund to do something very similar to that. So with that, I'm going to turn to Chris and ask him, if he will, to just give us an overview of what do the final numbers look like from Reboot Your Career.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you will recall, as Dr. Sullivan just mentioned, that this was an investment by the governor that originally started out in response to the impact of the pandemic on our workforce that we saw shift dramatically in a short period of time. And by investing this $10 million, it was designed to try to help individuals reskill and get back into the economy if they lost their jobs in the service sector and other places. As a result of that, we identified 5 primary industry sectors where we would have a focus, that our local REDOs identified that there were needs for jobs and that we could prepare these individuals in less than 12 weeks in order to place them in employment. If you go to the next slide, please. As we closed out the entire project, spent the entire $10 million, I wanted to show you where those dollars were invested. As you can see across the state, construction was the #1 investment where we had the greatest need. Certainly there's flexibility there because of the credentials that are earned there that are utilized by multiple industry sectors, but nonetheless, it was our leading investment. Secondly, healthcare, which is incredibly important. And I want to highlight that while there were almost 2,000 credentials issued there, to do that during a period of a pandemic where it became oftentimes more difficult to get into clinical settings, where that is a program where we are sometimes limited in terms of how many seats we can offer, that was a major, major lift by our colleges who did an unbelievable job responding in creative ways during the pandemic to help make sure that we're providing a workforce to respond to the needs that were there. Transportation logistics continues to be a high demand area. We made a significant impact there, a very expensive program to operate, but we made a significant investment there. The next one is what we call unique local demands. While we found that there were 5 industry sectors where there was universal demand across the state, we also found that within certain regions, there were specific credentials that were needed to meet something only within that region. And so we did do a carve out in order to allow opportunities for individuals to train in something that was only high demand in that area. As an example of that, this would be lineman training or AutoCAD or firefighters or wastewater treatment, which is really big down in the New Orleans region. We were able to add some of those regional high demand credentials, and that accounted for over 500 of the credentials that were issued. So our total 6,506, you asked, $10 million, that's what you get. That was, if you take $10 million and divide it by roughly the average cost to deliver one of these short-term credentials of about $1,500, you get the number 6,666. A few of these cost a little more, and so that's why we ended up with 6,506. This represents only the numbers where the colleges received funding from the governor's investment. I will tell you that there were many more credentials that were provided. These just represent the ones that were paid for by the governor's investment of $10 million. If you can go to the next slide. And I want to show you the demographics that go with this. This is a very, very important slide. I'm sorry that it's so busy, but this is important. You'll recall earlier today, Dr. Sullivan talked about the importance of workforce Pell. We have been advocating for that for years. And when we looked at our demographics with our workforce programming in past years, you'll remember Dr. Renee Centron saying, the average workforce student is a 37-year-old white male. And we were suspecting at the time that that had a direct correlation to an access issue. The governor's investment of $10 million once and for all showed us that what we were suggesting back then was absolutely right. If you look at this, you will see that once the credential was paid for, the training was paid for, the largest segment served through this program were African Americans, made up a larger number than the individuals that are white. If you look at gender, we had a larger percentage of females participating for the first time in this. While they still did not make up the majority, there was significant growth in the number of females who were able to participate in short-term workforce training. But then look at age. If you look at that bracket there, a full 56.4% of all the people we trained were under 30 years old. By investing in the programming and providing access where cost no longer was a barrier, it completely destroyed the demographic data that we had previously when this was a program available for those who could afford it. This will have I believe one of the most significant policy impacts going forward when we're able to show this to our members of Congress as they debate putting Workforce Pell into the final draft of the Competes Act as it moves forward, because this was an absolute game changer that would not have happened absent Governor Edwards' investment. And I'm pleased to see that he sees the value and is doubling that investment in the upcoming year. Now, I know that the question that we always get from board members is, well, what did the college in my region do? So I want to show you what, if you go to the next slide, this is a breakdown of each college's performance in the area. And what I identified were the total number of credentials that they issued during this period, as well as what their number one credential was. These are the 12 colleges of our system, as well as LSUE and Southern Shreveport, who also participated as a two-year college in our system. The number one production goes, Mr. Chairman, to Louisiana Delta Community College, who produced 885 credentials through this program. Construction was their number one, but they certainly had a big showing in healthcare and some other sectors as well. All of our colleges did a fantastic job. And you can see across the board the ones who did tremendous work. What you see here, though, is construction, healthcare, transportation, logistics, and then Delgado really meeting unique local demands, catering their workforce delivery to what their local region was demanding. And they knocked it out of the park in terms of meeting that local need. So it was a tremendous program. I think the benefit to it is not just the benefit to these 6,506 individuals that we helped reskill and get back in the economy, but there was tremendous value in several things. One, us learning lessons that we can employ going forward with the governor's new investment, as well as when Workforce Pell comes online. Number two, there was tremendous value in us working collaboratively with LSUE and Southern Shreveport and seeing what we have in common and how we can join together to meet needs of the state. And we were proud to have them as partners. And then third, looking at how we identify what credentials are most important. One thing that happened as a result of the pandemic was the great work that's done by the Louisiana Workforce Commission in providing occupational forecasting. It withstands a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily withstand an unannounced pandemic. And so the work that was done by us organizing and coordinating with our local REDOs in order to identify in a short amount of time what the immediate need was, develop some really great relationships that are going to pay dividends to us going forward. So a tremendously successful program, really proud of every one of our colleges and workforce leaders that worked on this, and certainly look forward to the great work that we'll be doing in the upcoming year when that investment is more than doubled. So with that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Very good. Questions for Chris? Folks, I know you've seen some of this data in various different forms and versions, but I got to tell you, every time I see that demographic slide, I just circle back to policy matters. And can't thank you enough as a board for the support that allows us to be able to innovate, do the work that we're doing, and help to inform future policy. That's exactly what this represents. So thanks to each one of you. Thank you, Chris.
Monty, I have
Yes,
a
sir.
question. Chris, you have just any ballpark data on average earnings for either by occupation? I mean, what's the real impact? What's the average earnings of the people who earned a credential?
Sure. So Supervisor Jackson, that is data that we are accumulating. One of the things that happens when we accumulate that data that we share with you is generally 1 year out from graduation, where we see the impact in terms of what their earnings were after 1 full year of employment. So that data is still coming in. I will tell you that in many of these jobs, when what we asked the REDOs to do, they were identifying exactly what we've been looking for that really matches our programs, academic and workforce. And that is those 3, 4, and 5-star jobs, where what our data has shown in those programs is that on the academic side, 1 year out from graduation is roughly $42,000 a year. And in the workforce program, it's roughly $48,000 a year, I believe. So that you end up with an average about $45,000 annual in earnings. And that is kind of the average across all programs. I think when we finally get those the earnings data in 1 year out from completion with these, those numbers I suspect will be very, very similar because we're dealing with very similar programs. I think it will be a little bit below because many of these, quite honestly, were entry level that we identified. We were working quickly to get some employment as opposed to working over 1 year or 18 months to have more career employment, getting someone in a position where they're going to be in a career. But as soon as we have that data, I'll provide all of that to you broken down by industry sector so that you can see what those outcomes were.
Thank you. I know, Monty, that's something you are great at pointing out. These are now taxpayers and paying back into our state coffers. So it's a very worthwhile investment. Thank you, Chris.
But Supervisor Jackson, I'll just add the other benefit. The job is not finished, in my opinion, either. What we were able to do is we now have an index of 6,506 individuals who got entry level credentials. We've got $20 million out there, plus we have a Foster's Promise program that these are individuals that frankly our colleges will have the opportunity to go recruit to come back to say, let's give you that next stackable credentials so that we can get them to that $48,000, $50,000 earning potential. So what we did is we've got hopefully repeat customers that we've created a database by getting them that entry level. We can bring them back and finish the job with the next stackable credentials.
Excellent point. Thank you.
The questions or thoughts? All right, Chris, thank you so much for your leadership. Appreciate the presentation. Very well done. I do want to mention in a related note, you'll note that the governor's proposal in his executive budget is for $20 million in total. 10 million to reboot 2.0, 10 million for workforce to develop the workforce for our broadband initiatives. As you all are aware, broadband has been the hot topic, particularly in rural communities, but certainly in many metropolitan areas as well. I want to introduce you to someone who will be taking on that broadband responsibility. No stranger to this system, certainly, but Dr. Ashley Mullins joins us as the Director of Rural Innovation and Broadband. Dr. Mullins, who's on the screen with us now, joins LCTCS from the LSU Ag Center, where she has an accomplished history in working with 4-H and youth programming across the state of Louisiana. She's well known in rural communities and for her work on broadband efforts. In her new capacity, Dr. Mullins will be working with our colleges and particularly the rural campuses to launch and advance rural initiatives to help us better serve our communities, as well as providing key support for the state's broadband initiatives. Dr. Mullins, welcome aboard. We look forward to working with you, and I'll turn it to you and ask if you'd like to make a few comments to the board.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning, Chairman and board members. I'm just really excited to be here. We have a long history of working together in my career with the LSU Ag Center, and happy to be a part of the team. I look forward to meeting all of you and getting to know more about the system itself and helping our colleges and campuses with their rural initiatives. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right. I want to jump, if I can, to a quick budget update. And I want to be clear here. In my entire career in higher education in Louisiana, we have not witnessed a budget proposal from an executive that is as good as Governor John Bel Edwards introduced 2 weeks ago. It invests heavily in higher education, but more importantly, it invests in all of education, from early childhood education to significant increases in the K-12 space. Increases, by the way, in the minimum foundations program, MFP, that funds K-12, specifically targeted at dual enrollment. So we're starting to see policy initiatives being supported by funding, which makes a lot of sense here, and it begins to create some alignment that could not be much more positive for us. In addition to significant new investments, I think $31 million proposed for faculty salary increases, an additional $20 million, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, for the Reboot 2.0 initiative. And beyond that, just a whole host of supports for our colleges to be able to catch up from the financial challenges that we've been dealing with. I want to just, again, give out every bit of thanks to Governor John Bel Edwards and to his administration, particularly to Commissioner Kim Hunter-Reid, who has been an incredible advocate for our system and for our colleges and for our mission, and it shows in this budget. So very much appreciate each one of them. If you have an opportunity to see Commissioner Reid or Governor Edwards or a member of their team, please reiterate to them how much we appreciate the continuing support. Any questions on the budget item? All right, let's jump to the college roundup. Again, our favorite part of the President's Report every month. Up at Bossier Parish Community College in the last week of January, the college announced its Fiber College initiative to deliver targeted non-credit training in support of broadband expansion. So Dr. Mullen, that may be your first visit right there. I think we've got you squared away in Northwest Louisiana. In the first round of training, 18 industry-based credentials in basic as well as specialized fiber optic certifications were earned. More training is scheduled in the coming month. But again, you see the branding that's becoming so evident. The second item there at Delgado Community College, big week this week with visitors from the U.S. Secretary of Labor, Secretary Walsh, as well as Undersecretary in Department of Labor, Lou, as well as Governor John Bell Edwards, Secretary Ava Coates, as well as Mayor Cantrell, and a whole host of folks from the Delgado community. Congratulations to Chancellor Staub for an incredible event hosted right there at Delgado, a national discussion about workforce resiliency taking place on one of our college campuses. I think an important note. And then next item over at Sewella Technical Community College just received a $200,000 donation for student scholarships from an out-of-state anonymous donor. Let that sink in for a second. An out-of-state anonymous donor just wrote a $200,000 check to Sewella Technical Community College. Congratulations to Chancellor Aspinwall and the entire team at Sewella Technical Community College. The final President's Update item I have is a little bit personal, but is I think important for us to keep in mind as we think about wins in life. We all go through different times in life, different stages in life. We have a member of our leadership team that has hit one of those key milestones this morning. That is Chancellor Tina Tenney, who this morning met for the first time her first grandbaby. And I just would like to congratulate Chancellor Tenney. I have informed her, for those of you that have grandbabies at home, that life has officially changed for her, whether she knows it or not. And look forward to meeting that little one at some point soon. So congratulations to Chancellor Tenney and her family on a happy and healthy baby girl. All right, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the President's report, but I'd like to turn now, if we can, to the board development session. And I can see that Joe Marine, as well as Dr. Amy Cable, have joined us here. And a number of you have reached out. We've had an opportunity to visit over the last few weeks. When COVID first struck, we were focused on the health concern. We were focused on the health of our employees and of our students. We continue to be focused on that, but what we're beginning to realize is across time, as now we have hit 5 continuous terms where COVID has impacted enrollment. And so a number of you have asked the question, what's been the impact? And so we put together a bit of background to help you to see what is the COVID impact on enrollment and finances, but then more importantly, what's next? Where do we go from here? So I'd like to ask, if we can, perhaps Joe, I think maybe you will begin and Amy will jump in there. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Joe Marine.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, and members of the board. Obviously, to know where we're headed, we have to have some idea of kind of where we are currently in the situation, where we've been. And while many of you probably know this information, I decided that it'd be a good idea to kind of share it to everybody as a primer to refresh your memory for those who may have forgotten, or even those new board members who are new to the system. But in essence, in 2008, there was most of our college budgets were state funded. And Supervisor Murphy, you'll obviously remember this. At one time, it was up to 90% in many cases. And what did that mean? What that meant is basically when you're funded mostly by the state, your enrollments really didn't impact your finances. But around 2009, with GRAD Act and other changes in the state funding model, there began a shift where the annual increases in tuition and fees now account for about 60% of our state budget, currently our total operating budget, and the other 40% is from the state. So what happens now is we are more enrollment driven than we've ever been in the past, which means that anytime there's a hiccup to enrollments, either from the market, environmental situations like with the hurricanes and others, it has a direct impact on the college's operating budgets. Next slide, Sarah. This is a visual to give you some idea of what I'm talking about. So back in 2009, fiscal year 2009, you see the numbers. We always call this kind of the frog model, where it looks like something's been hit by a heavy truck, as a note for that little hiccup that we saw in between 2010 and 2011 with state finances. That was just a little bit of creative state financing that was done back in the day to provide some maintenance of effort for the ARA funds, the American Recovery Funds. But as you can see, that shift hit pretty drastically around 2012 and has maintained on out to current year, where you see the drops in self-generated revenues and state funds. But I would like to also note that some of this has been propped up, obviously, by the use of HERF funds, which provide colleges and universities to be able to collect or to basically fund any bad debt with those HERF dollars. And you'll notice there's $12 million in bad debt collections, representing roughly 12,000 students, and also allows for colleges and universities to use those federal HERF funds to backfill losses in other revenues, tuition revenues and state revenues. And to date, that accounts for about $38 million between fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 22. The reason we mention that is that right now our finances are in good shape, in the sense that they are being supported by these federal HERF dollars. Obviously, at some point in time in the near future, they will roll off, and we'll talk about those. Sarah, so the next slide, please. Amy, would you like to take it?
Yes, good morning, Chair Price and members of the board. So this enrollment data really shows a comparison of 2019 to 2021. So if we think in the context of pre-COVID versus post-COVID. In 2019, we saw substantial growth in enrollment of 163,000 students. However, due to the pandemic, we've experienced a large decline, and we still don't really understand the full impact that COVID is going to have on our enrollment and revenue long term. While we have experienced declines amongst all of our students, I'd like to really highlight the enrollment decline amongst our adult education students. Our adult education learners are the ones that are most at risk, and they are most affected by the economy and health issues, and they are least able to operate within that remote environment due to digital literacy and literacy as a whole. And the adult education population is the pipeline into both credit and credit and non-credit programs. So if we think about pathways, we're looking at pathways from adult pathways between non-credit programs into credit programs as well. So this enrollment shift is amongst these areas are really impacting our enrollment as a whole across our system. Next slide. So as we shift to a more post-COVID environment, between 2021, we've experienced an enrollment decline of 10%. What we know is that enrollment recovery is a lot slower than enrollment loss. And so it's going to take our colleges a long runway to recover from the loss of enrollment. Could be a year, could be 2 to 3 years. From a national and external context, most public comprehensive institutions and community colleges have lost enrollment. And according to the National Student Clearinghouse, there's been a 5.8% drop of enrollment in post-secondary institutions in 2019. So LCTCS is not alone in this enrollment decline. It is happening at a national level. Another area that we have noticed as well, and along these lines, is a sharp decline in community colleges amongst males and minorities, as evidenced by our system decline, 17% in males and 8% of minorities. I think it would also be important to note that we should also pay attention to the white males, particularly in rural areas, because that's a disappearing population as well. There has been also a decline in dual enrollment of about 27%. And of course, if fewer students are engaging in dual enrollment, then they are less likely to attend college. So many students are really continuing to grapple through this pandemic. They're trying to balance remote learning with balancing education, with employment, and just an ever-changing infrastructure of our colleges. We try to get to a point where we're face-to-face, and then we're having to move back into online or into this hybrid model. And so it's important for our colleges to be able to shift and adapt and be flexible with our students and to increase enrollment in all of these particular areas. So again, as the pandemic continues and economic shifts continue to happen, we will have to continue to be flexible and be ever aware of our changing surroundings and really in tune with that population that we're working with. I'll turn it back over to Joe to talk a little bit more about revenue.
Thanks, Amy. And so kind of to give you the perspective, we talked about already about how the impact or that the impact of enrollment has a direct impact on revenues. And this slide, which you see here, is we're focusing on the student credit hour production because it's very direct. It has a very direct relation to tuition because basically tuition is tied to a credit hour production basis on an hourly rate. And so what you see here, obviously, is over time, the pre-COVID numbers from 19 through current year, fiscal year 22, where we are currently, in terms of the total credit hours that have been produced by semester. You can notice the blue line is the fall, the green line represents the spring semester, so spring to spring, and then the summer down at the bottom. And obviously with those declines, there's been an overall decline in tuition revenues coming in. We estimate roughly around $30 million. And obviously we'll have an additional $9.2 million potentially impacting the current fiscal year. So we are watching these, but as I mentioned before, much of this has been ameliorated currently and temporarily with federal funds. And so Sarah, if we could go to that slide next. As some of the board members may recall, I did a presentation, last year ago, maybe or so, when the federal funds, we were in the second year of our federal funds. We've had these funds, we've had 3 awards provided to us. You'll hear them called HERF 1, HERF 2, and HERF 3. Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds. We have roughly about $312 million that has been allocated to us over the course of these years. And it just dawned on me that we're going into the 3rd year of COVID as we approach March. But you'll see there that in essence, starting from the bottom, that we had $125 million allocated to us in student aid. Just to back up a little bit, there's basically 2 pots of funds provided, one for direct student assistance and one for institutional aid. The student aid are those are awards that are given directly to the student to help them with their life expenses. They do not have to be used for tuition. They can be, but they are an award to the student to help them directly. And of the $125 million, we've allocated $116 million to date. The $187 million in institutional aid funds, again, are those to help with COVID-related expenditures, whether it's retrofits to facilities, whether it's providing larger classrooms in terms of knocking out walls to provide larger areas that you have social distancing. In some instances, colleges have installed HVAC systems that provide for antiviral measures and so forth. So of the $187 million, we've spent roughly $141 million. And also out of those funds is where we use or can use funds for bad student debt and or to make up the difference of lost tuition or state revenues, which has been the majority of it. To put a note though, in terms of this being a temporary measure, come this May, those awards will end unless an extension is sought by colleges. And in surveying all of the colleges, most all of them will be requesting that extension, which we don't see it, that there won't be an issue with the federal government, more than likely. Ourselves and really the majority of higher ed, not only in this state, but nationwide, will be asking for an extension for another year through May of 2023. So I point that out that we have some relief, temporary, and it more than likely will be extended through the next fiscal year. But with that said, we're kind of wondering, obviously, not wondering, we actually are planning for what happens at the point in time when that money ends. And while our colleges are in a great financial situation, obviously we have to take steps going forward to figure out where we're going and what we can do to help bring our situation back to what it was before. So Dr. Sullivan, I believe the next slide is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Joe and Dr. Cable. Let me sort of step back from it for a second and just say, down $30 million across 2+ years now.
Right.
And in addition to that $30 million, potentially from the funding formula, from the state side of things, you could lose an additional 10. We're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of a $40 to $45 million total impact. The federal funds that we've received to this point have been exceptionally important to us. But what you can see quickly is we're down to a point now where we're about $35 million, $40 million remaining in federal institutional funds to draw down. What that really means to us is we have a short window to get some things done before the federal dollar runs out. And so the four priorities that you see in front of you are really the upshot of this is what we know to this point. This is what we know in terms of the resources that are out there. Now, these are the four priorities that we believe are critically important to us executing going forward. The first, it's really simple, drive enrollment. Everything we're talking about right now is solved when we drive enrollment. And so there's some sub bullets there that really sort of talk about revamping the onboarding process as one example. The financial aid opportunities that are out there, you know about Foster Promise and Reboot and all of the other things that we've talked about. How do we put those together in such a way to reach a broader population? And then a better job on the enrollment management front. As you know, you put in place an enrollment management policy. The colleges have stood up some infrastructure. We are beginning just now to begin to be able to do a good job at projecting enrollment. And then along comes COVID, and it sort of throws a wrench in things. But that item is really important, that we have a long-term skill set that ties together enrollment projection and revenue. Because if we aren't projecting revenue based upon enrollment, we are very likely going to miss the target. The second big bullet point, continue to identify and implement those practices that reduce the overall operating cost. You've heard us reference it in terms of how do we drive down cost per credit hour. If it costs $350 to produce a credit hour at one college versus $200 at the other, let's have a discussion about why there's variation in how there is in how we produce a credit hour. The revenue is relatively similar from college to college per credit hour. The problem is the cost infrastructure to create that credit hour ranges broadly. We've got to figure out how and why and what we can do to solve that challenge. Obviously, the rural nature of some of our campuses has an impact. High cost programs have an impact. There's a whole range of things that impact, but continuing to focus there are critically important. The next one, to continue to identify and eliminate lost leaders. One of those lost leaders is a priority for all of us, dual enrollment. But what we know for sure is that our colleges lose $5.5 million a year on dual enrollment. Should we continue that practice, or should this board look at ways for us to strengthen our position in negotiating price point around dual enrollment? And then, of course, the item that you see there at the bottom is to continue to focus on those rural campuses. The reason being is that the bulk of the loss at a given college in terms of structural challenge, it can be traced back to those rural campuses and the overhead of the rural campus. So those have become the four sort of lightning rods, if you will, that we'll drill down into. Intent is to take this information that you've seen today and then carry that forward to the next board meetings, board development session, so that we can talk about perhaps at that one driving enrollment, or we can talk about in a more detailed way, how do we identify and eliminate lost leaders? So take this, I hope you will take this as these are the four priority points that we'll be focused on. And certainly we'll be drilling down into the data that we have, both financial as well as enrollment, to understand things like what happened when we went to primarily an online environment. Well, we drill down on that and we know what the answer is. It wasn't pretty. We lost a ton of students. The thing that we're trying to do now is a bit of crosstab to figure out, are the male students that we're missing in general, did they leave largely because of a need to go to work or work more hours? Or did they leave because they weren't comfortable in the online environment? Did they leave because life changed? I mean, a whole range of things. So we have that data. We are beginning now to sift through it to really understand the actions of our customers so that we can begin to think about what are the growth strategies that are going to help us to work our way out of that current circumstance. Let me stop there and glad to answer any questions that you may have. No one? All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn back to you.
Thank you, sir, Mr. President. All right, I guess we can move along now to the where we left off. Supervisor Jackson, I believe it's time for you to present the facilities action items for consideration. I believe I'd start with number 3, I believe, H3.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first item under facilities, number 3, we've handled the other 2, obviously. a cooperative endeavor agreement between Louisiana Delta Community College and the city of Bastrop.
Yes, sir, Supervisor Jackson. We have 3 items. This is the first of the 3. This is a cooperative endeavor agreement between Delta and the city of Bastrop for a building that the city of Bastrop is offering to provide, a facility that the city is offering to provide the college for nursing clinical work. This will help free up some of the space that they currently have or are using for this training for them to be able to use other programs to fit them in. As such, staff recommends the board approve a cooperative endeavor agreement, CEA, between Louisiana Delta Community College, LDCC, and the city of Bastrop, effective upon signature of the parties and continuing for a term of 3 years, with LDCC having the option to extend the CEA for an additional 2-year period.
Thank you, Joe. You've heard the recommendation from staff. Is there a motion?
So moved. Roman Hardy.
Motion by Mr. Hardy, second by Ms. Bradford.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to just point out that the Bastrop facility certainly serves a big purpose up in that part of the world, and we're wholeheartedly endorse the recommendation here. Monty, you have anything?
Chairman, yeah, thank you for that, and just want to make clear mention that that Bastrop campus is one that was not a part of Act 391, was not a part of Act 360, didn't receive the resources that many of the other campuses did. Unfortunately, the facilities there in Bastrop have fallen into pretty tough disrepair, and we're working very closely with the delegation from that part of the world, as well as with the folks in division administration, to make sure that that Bastrop campus is included as a part of our capital outlay request. Unfortunately, it was an item that was recommended for funding by this board. Unfortunately, there was not enough money to have it be recommended from the Board of Regents to the division. We have now worked with the delegation to get that project put back into House Bill 2 this time. I just specifically want to call that one out because we have faced so many facility-related challenges there. So thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I'd also like to mention that the board took action on that facility, on the old facility, to dispose of it.
Excellent.
Thank you for that input. You've heard the motion. You've heard discussion. Is there any opposition to the motion? Being no opposition, the motion passes. Item 4, servitude and right-of-way agreement from the Louisiana Community and Technical College System on behalf of River Parishes Community College, Reserve Campus to Energy Louisiana, LLC.
Yes, sir. This item and the following item are somewhat related. This one is related to a current right-of-way that is underway at RPCC, where we come before the board to ask them for your approval. The next item I'll explain as well. This is, again, just to bring in electrical services to a building at RPCC with Entergy. As such, staff recommends that the board authorize the president to execute a right-of-way agreement between Entergy Louisiana LLC and the Lctcs on behalf of our River Parishes Community College to enhance the power capacity provided at the reserve site and for the continued maintenance of the utility distribution equipment. The legal description and technical drawings illustrating the area to be transferred will be maintained in the Office of the Chief Operations Officer.
You've heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion?
Move.
And a second?
I'll second. Motion by Mr. Kuvion, a second by Ms. McConduit.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you. And the final item, Mr. Chairman, utilities right-of-way agreements, blanket approval.
Yes, sir. As I mentioned, they're somewhat related. As the board may recall, we appear to be bringing before the board on a continual basis these right-of-way agreements for our colleges. And what we are seeking here is that in many cases, they are just, they're very time sensitive and need to move very quickly. So we are asking that the board provide that authority to the LCTCS president. And it's only strictly related to capital outlay projects. Act 360 projects will still be brought before the board for action as they involve relations between us, the facility corporation, and obviously the utilities company. We have currently 4 projects in the pipeline coming down at North Shore, Fletcher, BRCC, and Louisiana Delta Community College. And just to make, we're just mentioning those as a point of reference for the members. but again, ask for your approval of this item to give the authority to the system president. As such, staff recommends that the board authorize the president to execute right-of-way agreements between the utility providers and the LCTCS on behalf of its member colleges for all current and future projects funded through capital outlay appropriations. The legal descriptions and technical drawings illustrating the areas to be transferred will be maintained in the Office of the Chief Operations Officer.
Thank you, Joe. I think that's a great idea to give our president this authority. You've heard the recommendation from staff. Is there a motion?
Move.
So moved. Motion by Ms. McConduit. Second. Second by Mr. Hardy.
Thank you. Any discussion on the recommendation? Being no discussion, is there any opposition to the recommendation? Motion carries. Thank you. That ends the facilities reports, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Supervisor Slade, would you present the finance action items for consideration?
Yes, sir. I sure will. We have two items to bring before the board today. Item number one is a consulting service contract between Bossier Parish Community College and Huron Consulting Services, LLC. Staff recommendation, Joe, will you share with us?
Yes, sir. This is an amendment to a contract, which is raising it over the threshold that requires board action. It was initially a one-year contract for $112,000 for strategic planning and institutional alignments for COVID-19 that Bossier is looking for assistance with. They are asking to extend it by a year, and also by $112,000, making it a total of $224,000, which is over the $150,000 threshold requiring board action. As such, staff recommends that the board approve an amendment to a consulting services contract between Bossier Parish Community College and Huron Consulting Services, LLC, effective January 30th, 2022 through January 31st, 2023. This contract is subject to the approval of the Office of State Procurement.
Thank you, Joe. Board, you've heard the recommendation. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Carter.
Second.
Second by Ms. Bradford.
Okay, you heard the recommendation. Is any discussion? Any opposition to the recommendation? Hearing none, motion carries. The second item.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, on that point, I just want to make a quick comment to the members of the board. I have asked Joe, if he will, to go back and review contracts to take a look at the number of contracts that come in at a given number and then subsequently require board approval. As you know, that does happen from time to time for specific reasons, but it shouldn't be a common practice. And so I specifically asked Joe if he would to go back, take a look at those. If we find anything of concern, certainly we'll come back and let you know about that. But continuing contracts should be specified in term and in amount, and we've got to make sure that we're living within those. And certainly, I know that Joe and his team will come back with data to help the board understand what the next steps should be. So with that, I'll turn back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Second item to be considered is the Board of Regents Managed Endowment Scholarship. Joe, can you take us on this?
Well, I'll pass it over to Quentin as the head of the foundation and funds. So Quentin.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Chair Price, members of the board, Dr. Sullivan. The last time we were together back in January, this board approved the second most in our history as a system in the amount of endowments that we're bringing forward to the Board of Regents to be considered for matching. This is going to put us over that number and take us to approximately $1.8 million in endowments that we're going before the Board of Regents. I have every reason to believe and confidence in our advancement officers and the colleges and the relationships that they're building, that we're going to make it to $2 million this time next year, coming back to this board. So really excited about the work that's happening out at our colleges in this effort. So with that, the staff recommends that the board approve the following endowed scholarship: River Parishes Community College and EBUNC First Generation Scholarship for P-TECH majors from St. John the Baptist Parish, $50,000 total, $30,000 in private funds and $20,000 in public funds.
Thank you, Quentin. You heard the recommendation. Do we intend a motion for this endowment scholarship?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. McConaughey, second by Ms. Butler McIntyre.
Is there any discussion? Quentin, I want to thank you. This is a wonderful addition for us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Having no consent, I recommend that this be passed. And this concludes my report. Mr. Chairman.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Supervisor McConaughey, would you present the personnel action items for our consideration?
I will definitely do that. So first we have for review and advisement, policy number 6.011, prohibition and prevention of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Is there a staff person? If not, I'm happy to.
I can take it, Supervisor McConaughey.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So this is obviously with changes in federal law and obviously in state law and interest that has been provided by the legislative body on power-based violence, discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Our HR directors have been meeting for some time now, as this policy was recently adopted or amended back in 2019. So within a 3-year period, we're coming back to make clarifications, to add language to it that makes it more compliant with state and federal law. And so in this case, we are bringing before the board just for review and advisement. This is not an item that necessarily needs action today. We are presenting it for review and advisement with the intent that at the next board meeting, as per policy and procedures of the board will take action on it. But in essence, it clarifies Title IX, which is in Title VII, employee versus student power-based violence issues. It also provides clarifying language that applies to all persons. In the past, the policy would apply to employees and or students. In essence, it strikes that reference and makes it applicable to all persons. And in other cases, it provides further clarification in terms of when you have to report. And it's not a matter, do you see something or whatever. If you are told, even if you're told something, you have to act. There is no wiggle room for somebody to play with this. So again, it's a substantive change. It's a very lengthy change. And again, we bring it to the board for review and advisement for action at the next meeting. That concludes my report.
It's an important change. So thank you, Joe. With that, I would like to request a motion to enter into executive session to discuss items H9, pending and potential litigation, H10, River Parishes Community College Interim Chancellor Compensation, and H11, Lctcs System President Contract Recommendation. Sarah, can you do a roll call vote? So we need a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Jackson and a second by Ms. Mount. And we will do a roll call vote to go into executive session. Chairman Price.
Yes.
Supervisor Mount.
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford.
Yes.
Supervisor Butler McIntyre.
Yes.
Supervisor Carter.
Yes.
Supervisor Hardy Roman.
Yes.
Supervisor McConaughey.
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy.
Yes.
Supervisor Salah.
Yes.
Supervisor Toops.
Yes.
Supervisor Kuvion.
Yes.
Supervisor Pickron.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a unanimous vote to enter an executive session at 11:45 a.m. And members of the board, I'd like to remind you to use that executive session link that was sent to you by email and should be fresh on top of your inbox right now. Thank you.
You know,
Damn, both my legs is cramping.
Hello to any of our staff members and guests who are watching. It looks like our executive session has concluded and our members will begin joining us back in the next minute or so.
Well, here we come.
All right, Sarah, I think we have everyone.
Yes, sir. We're checking that right now.
Okay.
McConduit, Murphy, Salath, Tubes, Kuvion, Pickford. Perfect. We will go ahead and take a roll call vote to exit executive session. It is 12:24, and we will start with a roll call vote. Supervisor Price.
Here.
Supervisor.
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford.
Yes.
Supervisor Butler McIntyre.
I'm here.
Supervisor Carter.
Yeah.
Supervisor Hardy Roman.
Here.
Supervisor McConduit.
Here.
Supervisor Murphy.
Yes.
Supervisor Salath.
Yes.
Supervisor Toops.
Yes, ma'am. Looking forward to it.
Supervisor Kuvion, we'd like to note for the record, did have technical issues during executive session and has not been able to join back in. And Supervisor Pickron.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you do have a quorum of the board present to exit executive session.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to reconvene the meeting, and I would like to state for the record that no votes were taken and no consensus was reached during executive session. Supervisor McConduit, would you like to continue with your items, please, ma'am?
Absolutely. All right. Item number 9, pending and potential litigation. It's just an informational item.
Right. That's all.
10, River Parishes Community College Interim Chancellor Compensation. A recommendation to be provided.
Yes, ma'am. Staff recommends that the board approve a compensation package increase to Dr. James Carlson, Interim Chancellor at River Parishes Community College, with a base salary of $162,750, a housing allowance of $25,000, a vehicle allowance of $7,500, or the use of a state vehicle, and a civic organization allowance of $2,500 for a total compensation of $197,750 to be effective February 7th, 2022.
All right, so with that, Sarah, do I need a motion to approve?
We do, yes, you'll need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Mount
Second.
and a second by Ms. Bradford.
Any opposition or discussion? All right, hearing none, that item passes. All right, the next item is item 11, LCTCS, System President Contract Recommendation. Again, I'll turn it over.
I think, Mr. Chairman, you were going to discuss this one and read that recommendation.
Okay, I can do that. This is a recommendation from the Personnel Committee from the Board of Supervisors. Due to Dr. Sullivan's, this is a recommendation. Due to Dr. Sullivan's recent exemplary performance evaluation and in accordance with the LCTCS Board Policies number 6.05, evaluation process for LCTCS president, we are requesting the following items effective, following actions effective February 9th, 2022 and extended through February 8th, 2027. Personnel Committee requests that Dr. Sullivan's annual base pay be $429,000 with a housing allowance of $50,000, an auto allowance of $24,000, and an employer deferred compensation retirement contribution of $57,000, or an annual or an amount equal to the maximum allowable value under IRS guidelines, for a total compensation of $560,000. The contract shall include an annual 2.5% escalator based on base pay, pending favorable performance evaluations, although the board has the authority to provide additional compensation. We are also requesting that Mr. Joe Marine, Chief Operations Officer at the board office, be notified of this implementation.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Can I have a motion?
So moved. I'll second.
All right, that was a motion by Ms. Mount and a second by Mr. Jackson. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion or opposition, colleagues?
Just to say, I think I expressed the sentiment of the board, how enthusiastically we support this recommendation, and Monty to say that we are proud to have you as our leader, and to say job well done. And we could not be prouder of you and the work that you and our system office does.
Well said, Chip. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I think he echoes all of our sentiments. So
Chair,
with that,
if I may, I would just say thank you to this board. I share with you at every opportunity that without the work that you do and the backing that you provide to the leaders in the system, we simply could not do the work that we do every day. So thank you to this board. Thank you for the vote of confidence and not just in me, but in the leadership of this organization. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
all
Sullivan.
right, with that, I will conclude my report.
All righty. Hang on. All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, the consent agenda recommendation, if you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
I'm trying, man. Just
All right.
hang in there. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So staff recommends that the board approve the consent agenda, which consists of agenda items I-1 through I-2, consisting of the Bossier Parish Community College and South Louisiana Community College curriculum changes.
Okay, y'all heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Mount, second by Ms. Butler McIntyre.
Any more discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. Would like for each of y'all to reference updates as noted, and I would like to encourage you to review the information provided. Is there any additional business to come before the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to note for the record that there was no request for public comment by email, by web, or phone in.
Right. Okay,
I was
very
looking
good.
the other way. Yes, sir.
That's good news. Thank you, Sarah. Are there any announcements that need to come before the board? Is there a
I just
motion?
like-
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just like to share that celebrate what you want to see more of is by Tom Peters. It's his quote. And as you know, may know, Tom Peters wrote In Search of Excellence.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything else? I request a motion to adjourn the Zoom, the board.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Toops and a second by the general consensus of the board. Thank you.
God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Guys, y'all have a great day. Thank you.
See y'all next time. In
Bye.
person.